everyone, and welcome back to another episode of More Sewing with Michele. My name's Michele Rank, and I am going to be your guide through this adorable quilt in back of me called Stitching Spools. Isn't it gorgeous? I fell in love with it, and I knew I had to bring it in for one of my episodes. It is actually designed by one of my favorite designers, Holt from My Bonnet, as well as Riley Blake Designs. So I'm going to be doing a demo to show you how to put together these adorable spools. I also have a little bit of history on spools, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss this episode of More Sewing with Michele. So let me first start talking off about my love of Lori Holt. Now, I know I featured some of her stuff before, but I really can't get enough of her vintage look, her use of fabrics. She really is one of those designers. There's a handful of them up there that every time they come out with a pattern or design, I know I'm going to fall in love with it. And the one in back of me, Stitching Spools, you know, it didn't fail to impress me as well. So you can see that there's 3 different types of spools on there. There's actually, I think there's 2 spools and actually 1 bobbin. But in this kit, it is a complete kit. It comes in this adorable box. Isn't that sweet? So long after your quilt is done, if you make the quilt for someone else or if you hang it on your wall, you're going to have this pretty cool box to keep as well. And it's got a little magnet. So it's just a fun box. I love it, and I can't wait to store some of my, it could be a charm pack, it could be notions, who knows what. But this box is going to be permanently in my sewing room and displayed. I just think it's so cute with all the little spools listed all around it. And keep in mind, those are the same spools with the same fabrics that you get in this kit. Now, I've included a picture right here so you can see everything that came in the kit. You get a charm pack, you get the fabrics, you get these instructions that you need to put everything together. And as I've stated before, I love clear and concise instructions where I'm not left scratching my head going, what the heck are they trying to tell me? They're easy, and it's a fun little block to put together these little spools. Now we have a short spool, which is here. We have the regular size spool, and then we have the variegated spool. So there's 3 different spools that we have the instructions for in here. And like I said in the kit, basically the only thing you would need additional is you're going to need your rotary cutter, your cutting mat, your ruler to measure things. You will need some thread, and you need a sewing machine. I think that's about it, and maybe a number 2 pencil. So other than that, everything's contained in the kit, and I love that. It's one of those things, you get this kit, you open it up, you can start cutting and sewing within just a short amount of time, and potentially have this quilt put together pretty fast, in a weekend for sure. Everything in here is 1 stitch. It's a 5-inch stacker, which is like a charm pack. You get 1 1/8 yards of the fabric here. And then you also get a 1/2 yard of the nutmeg fabric, which is for the spools. And you get 3/4 of a yard of the daisy fabric and a 1/2 yard of the cayenne plaid. So you get all of these beautiful fabrics, which you notice go perfectly together. So I love that. And like I said, the only thing additionally that you need is a few things that you already probably have in your sewing room. So this actual quilt dimensions, I'm looking, it's a table runner. It is 37 by 65. But here's the one thing that I noticed. Now keep in mind, I made the full table runner, but you could basically make 2 little table toppers and add different borders around. You could cut it in half and then have 2 things to give away. it's really limitless, all the things you can do with it. You could have one long table runner. There's lots of options. But in here, the kit will go over how to make this complete table runner, which is really cute. So that's it. That is our wonderful Stitching Spools kit that we have for you today on More Sewing with Michele. Now, I am going to show you, I've got some fabrics here. I'm going to show you how to make each one of these spools, as well as the variegated one. Let me get my machine set up and I will dive into that next. So you should know what you have to do by now to pick up that totally unique, fun table runner in back of me by Lori Holt and Riley Blake. So to pick up this kit, you're simply going to go to moors-sew.com, or you can click on the link in the description where you can pick up this kit so you can make that table runner in back of me. Don't forget also, use your coupon codes for this month. Check it out, moors-sew.com. So, did you know that George Clark invented the very first spool of thread in 1818? And it would run so that it would run smoothly in a machine. Before that, they used to take the thread. They were wound up in like balls, kind of like, you think of a ball of yarn. Same thing with thread. But he actually invented the spool so that it can run in a modern sewing machine without a hitch. So thank you, George Clark. Also, get this. In 1969, a spool of thread only cost about 25 cents. Can you believe it? 25 cents. And wooden spools arrived about 1820. And thanks so much to the Industrial Revolution, where the Industrial Revolution, when it first started, they really focused on textiles. So being that threads and cotton are all part of that, the spool and threads all were one of the first things that were updated and made better through the Industrial Revolution. So thank goodness for that. Vintage spools and notion can be very valuable. So if you have some that your grandmother had or some that are just kind of retro, hold on to them. Display them in your room creatively, or you could always sell them too. But some of them are worth quite a bit of change. So hold those dear and keep them or sell them. It's up to you. In 1970 is when they stopped using wood spools for thread. So that's a little bit of spool information on, I'll give you a little bit more later, but I want to get into sewing these blocks. So I've got the 3 blocks here. We have the first one, and keep in mind my fabrics here, I used all the fabrics in the kit to basically make that table runner. So these are additional fabrics that I pulled just from my scraps. So this is the small one. You could make this as a bobbin. I thought it would be really cute to do it with some gray thread to make it look like those metal bobbins. But of course, that was after I already put one together. So this is the small spool of thread, or it could be a bobbin. This is the regular size that we have there. And then we have the variegated thread one, which I think is so stinking cute. So we have 6 different strips of fabric as well as the ends. Now on all of these, they're all the same width. So it doesn't matter which one you make, they're all going to be the same width, which is why it is such a breeze to put these blocks together to make that quilt. You can see some are vertical, some are horizontal, and that all works together flawlessly. So with that said, let me show you how to stitch these together. Okay, so the first thing that I did is that I took these little pieces that you're going to have, and what they are, they make up the corners for the wood spools. So they're a little bit shyer. These are 1.5, and these are 1 1/4 squared. And I've taken, you can see I've taken a pencil and I've marked from one end to one end. And I have 4 of them that are the same way. And then we have the wood part of the spools. I have 2 pieces for that. We have the sides, which would be the background here. And then on this particular spool, I'm going to have it as yellow. So I have a piece of yellow fabric just cut. This is actually 4.5 by 4.5. And then these are the strips for the other one. But the first thing that you're going to want to do is, if you've made a snowball block, it's kind of the same thing. But you're going to take these little half square triangles, we're going to call them, with the pencil line. I'll show you that up close. You may want to take a pin and pin it. I oftentimes don't, because it's just such a precise little thing. I have on my machine, I have just my regular sewing foot, but I'm going to go ahead and get the second one ready as well. And I'm going to just repeat everything I just did. I'm going to line it up. Now keep in mind, this is one of the things that when you have smaller pieces, you need to be a little bit more precise with your bits, because if you don't sew it correctly on a small thing, it's going to show up your mistakes more than if you were doing a block, say 12 by 12. So that's why I'm really taking my time, making sure the ends have lined up. And then I'm going to sew just on the inside of this line, so that when I flip it over, when I stitch and flip, that flip is going to be precisely where I want it. So with that said, I'm going to do some chain piecing here. And I am going to simply drop my foot and do some sewing. Okay, so let's do this again. I'm simply going to start stitching just on the inside of that line. I'm going to up the speed just a little bit. And when I get to the end, I simply am going to lift my foot and kind of slide this next one in, like so. I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to take these pins out. I will reuse them. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same step on the other side, making sure that the angles are the same, going in the right direction. And I'm going to pin this. Repeat the process over here. And making sure my sides are lined up correctly. Pin again. And then we'll do this one more time. And once again, I'm not sewing on my pins because, as you can see, I have my pins just shy of where the stitch line is. So that's how I make sure that I don't sew over my pins. Okay. So then what I would do is simply, I'm going to finger press these open so that you get that shape there. And then you will cut the excess off the corners like so. So you don't want that bulk in your seams. And once again, if I don't have an iron set up here, but this is just for the demo, I would give it a good press. Stitch away about 1/4 inch away from the sides on both there. And then you'll have your piece like so. Okay, so the next step is to sew the sides on. And for that, I'm simply going to line up the sides, the color of the spool and the sides. I'm going to switch over now to my 1/4 inch piecing foot with a flange. Add that on, and I'm going to hit the button on my machine to take it to a 1/4 inch setting. And then I'm simply going to sew these on. And oh my golly, this seems so slow because I always sew in the fast lane, but for this demonstration, I've slowed my machine down. And then you're going to do the other side the same exact way, where I'm going to line up those pieces. Once again, when you have small blocks, you really want to take the time to make sure that everything is precise as possible. Okay. So then now we would simply press those open. And once again, I am simply going to finger press for the sake of time here. And then what we do is we line up the sides of the spool. So you can see here, I'm going to turn it and I'm going to line it up and stitch it down just the way I've been doing. And as crazy as that sounds, that's as difficult as it is to put this block together. Let me stop here. So we sewed the two pieces together. We sewed this piece, and now I'm sewing that piece on. You would repeat the process to create that. And it's that simple. That's how easy it is to get that block done. Let me go ahead and finish this. I think that demo's done. And then let me show you how to do really fast piecing on these strips. Now keep in mind, these strips are going to come and they're in like a charm pack. So you can see that we have that zigzag edge. So what I like to do, I count those edges. So when I line it up, I'm going to hold it here so that you can see. I line up the tips of the edge with the side of the fabric. And that way I know that it's lining up perfectly. And basically what you will do for the variegated bobbin thread is you're going to sew 6 of them together. Now I have 4 of them left over here, so I'm going to go ahead and just continue sewing these together real quick. Let me add another little piece here. And once again, what I like to do is to take the part that has the zigzag on it, match it up the tips to a side that's straight. And that way I know everything is lining up correctly. And let me get back in my comfort level here and sew in my usual speed. And just like that, you're going to keep going until you get 6. I will do one more real quick here. Lining up those tips once again, putting it in the machine, and sewing away. So when you get all 6 of them lined up, you end up with this gorgeous spool with 6 different colors. Now think about it. If you were to take these and maybe do all blues, it could be like a variegated spool thread, or I kind of like the rainbow thing. I think it's more whimsical and it adds that vintage feel to it. But that's how easy it is to put these quilt blocks together. Super stinking fast. It's a little bit technical with the corners here, but other than that, it's basically the same block that you repeat over and over and over again. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows of 4. So that's how many you're going to create. And keep in mind there's 3. There's the small, there's the variegated, and then most of them in the whole quilt are these ones here, the regular size spools. Now I want to show you a little bit close up of what I did when I quilted it when I was done. And I've got a little bit more information on history and the spool. So one moment. Okay, so I wanted to show you up close kind of how I finished up this quilt. So you can see on the spools, I added some stitching completely around them. You can see I went with a white thread all the way around, and then I added some free motion stitching lines to make it look like the spools of thread are wound. On the edging, the border, I did straight line quilting, and then I added some free motion feathers to give it that look. It was all pretty fun, nothing technical, nothing very difficult, but this quilt, oh my goodness, it is just such a favorite of mine. And once again, stitching spools and how I finished it. So the earliest known threads were made by the Egyptians, and they would use plant fibers, animal fur, and also animal hides to create that weave to get the thread that they would sew things with. So that's the earliest documented historical as far as threads when they were produced. And modern threads will have a shelf life of about 50 years. So the spools you buy today are going to last for a long time. there are certain things that you need to know to increase the lifespan of your threads. First off, you don't want to ever expose them to direct sunlight, to moisture, to extreme heat, and humidity. Keep them in a neutral place, kind of like where you would like to hang out. Same thing for your threads, and that will help prolong their life. Now, I'm going to give you a little trick real quick on how to test if a spool of thread is still good. I have often, people often will give me their grandmother's threads and stuff like that, and I will test them. And sometimes, yeah, that thread's no good anymore, and other times I will use them. So it all depends upon the thread and each independent spool, how it was stored, and kind of what type of thread it was to start with. So the way that you want to test a spool is you want to take a good length of about so long, and you want to wrap it up, and then you want to give it a good tug. If you can tug and it's not going to break right away, then you're good. So you can see this one, I'm tugging and it's not breaking right away. All thread will eventually break on those constrictions. That's why you'll see sometimes when you're sewing, if thread gets wound up in the bobbin or in the top where the spool feeds into your machine, you'll have a thread snap. That's why it's made to snap. Otherwise, it could damage your machine. And then we'll do this with this other thread. This thread's a little bit older. It was given to me, but you can see I can pull, and I'm pulling pretty strong, and it takes a while before it breaks. So both of these threads are pretty good. Now, if you were to pull and that thread was to snap right away, you would know that that thread maybe is not viable for anything that you need to make that's going to have permanence into it. You could use it for crafting. You could donate it to a school. You can use it just as a decoration in your room, but I wouldn't use it on any quilt or anything that you want permanence to. So there's my little trick for testing your threads and to make sure that they're good. And remember, store your threads where you would want to hang out, where it's not in direct sunlight, there's no humidity, and it's not extreme hot or cold. And you'll be good to go for many years to come. So there you go. It's a wrap on this episode of More Sewing with Michele. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me on More Sewing with Michele. Don't forget, get your kit so you can make that gorgeous table run in Back of Me by Lori Holt. And also, don't forget this box. Oh my gosh. Can you already start thinking about what you're going to put in it? It's been my pleasure to have you join me, and I look forward to next time on More Sewing with Michele. Until then, excuse me, I hope you have a fabulous week. Have fun stitching, and I'll see you on the next More Sewing with Michele. Bye-bye!